It's estimated that 20 million Americans struggle with a gambling problem, and around the world, 6% of the population is said to be addicted. That's upwards of 429 million people, but only 6% of those people will ever actually seek help for their gambling problem. Today, I want to share 10 stories of gamblers who have now sought out help for their problem. Here are their stories of gambling addiction.
As I'm driving towards the casino, I'm in my head screaming at myself. I'm like, turn around, you idiot. You know what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of there with no money. I remember looking in the mirror, and as I'm screaming, I can see my face red. I can see the veins out. I can see the tears in my eyes, and I'm punching the roof of the car. And yet my foot's still on the gas pedal driving towards the casino. Get to the casino, get out of the car, still stressed as all get out, walk up to the door, open the door. I hear everything that's going on in there, and immediately, you might as well have shot me up. I was calm. I was happy. So went in there. This was on Friday night. I started gambling. I won pretty early on. Again, I didn't break the bank, but there was a couple grand that I won on my $5,000. So I'm like, okay, now I have more money to stay and win more money, which was the mentality. If I can win this much, I can win more, And then of course, the whole time I'm praying the gambler's prayer of just let me get this big win and I'll pay off all my debts and I'll never do this again. Which is BS. Kept gambling. And I'm finally getting near the end of my money. I can't wait to run out of money so I can stop gambling, but I won't stop gambling until I run out of money. Finally run out of money. I walk out. I'm thinking, okay, it's Saturday morning. I've been here overnight. Let me get in the car, go home, be depressed like I normally am, and then I can get through this. So I get in the car, I turn on the car, and I hear Sunday morning music. And I'm like, why is there Sunday morning music on Saturday? Well, it was actually Sunday. So I had been there for 36 hours, blew every single penny that I had, lost a day without realizing it, but drove back home, sat in the parking lot of my grocery store that all day, wondering what to do, took a bottle of antidepressants while I'm sitting there, realized that I wasn't trying to kill myself. I was just crying for help because I had no idea what was going on with me. Ended up in a hospital, in a psychiatric ward. I don't remember if it was a day or 2 days. I just know I drank a lot of charcoal and then woke up and realized there was a paycheck in my mailbox. And again, I don't know how I did this, but I checked myself out against medical advice, went back, got that check, cashed it, went back to that same casino. And a couple hours later, I'm out of money again. And that's when I knew it was time. That's when I knew I needed help.
It was a very challenging time in my life, and there was a lot of control. I felt like my own gambling, I had control of, because I didn't feel I had control in a lot of areas of my life because of, the relationships I'd put myself in, like just experiencing a lot of things. And so for me, the gambling was the one thing I was hanging on to that gave me comfort. So all the problems and everything it was causing me, I was justifying because of everything else I was experiencing. So it was the one thing I thought I had control over. It was the one thing that I just wasn't willing to let go of because it was the one thing I was using to cope with just life and everything I was going through, things I didn't have a voice to explain. Grieving the fact that it can't be in my life anymore, because I am a person who knows that I can never gamble again. If I gamble again, my life will be just as chaotic and upside down as it was 3.5 years ago. And I personally don't want to go back there. So I will continue to do everything I can to keep moving forward. But one of the processes for me was just really recognizing the grief I was feeling about the loss of gambling. And as sick as that sounds, like, how could you mourn something that hurt you? And it's like, I think we all need to go through kind of a let go process, especially if it's been, I know you hear stories where it's only been in somebody's life 3 months, but it's caused tremendous harm. But it was in my life 15 years. It went through 3 different relationships with me. Or 2 different relationships with me. It went through, loss and grief of losing my grandmother, who was very close to it. Helped me get through struggles with my mom. I remember that episode with my mom when she was in the hospital after her first heart attack. It was like day 2 she was in the hospital. I remember wanting to gamble to escape my feelings around that. And that was the day I won my first jackpot. And my mom was in the hospital. My sister was texting me, Mom needs her bag. Mom needs this. Where are you? And I was sitting in a casino playing a game because I was so overwhelmed by what I just went through with my mom. That memory still sits with me. And that's kind of, I think, for me, when I really, that first jackpot, that emotional experience, it just clenched it for me.
I was totally alone and isolated and by myself and feeling lonely, away from my friends and my support network. I started getting into other forms of gambling and gambling online. And I hit a jackpot on a slot machine on like a $1 or $2 bet where I won close to $10,000. And that for me was this really pivotal experience, right? Where I saw, oh man, I could win 5,000 times my money, right? Instead of just 3 or 4 times my money. If I could do that with a big enough bet, maybe I could, set myself up. What was so interesting to me about winning the $10,000, which unsurprisingly to you and probably anyone that's experienced a gambling addiction, I lost within the course of probably a month, right? Every penny of it. Two things that I find interesting reflecting on it. One is I didn't tell anybody that I won it on a slot machine. I told people that I won it playing poker because I saw poker as a respectable chance, like test of skill that I could proudly say, but I was way too embarrassed to tell anyone that I won it on a slot machine. And the second piece is that it totally skewed my perception of bet sizing, right? So before that time, I was staking $1 or $2 on a spin, right? If I sat down at a slot machine at that time, maybe I'd start with 30 bucks. But with $10,000 in my bankroll, I remember it was the World Cup of, I don't know, whatever that was, 2014 maybe. All of a sudden, I went from placing $10 bets on sports games and enjoying them to putting like 500 or 600 or $1,000 on a soccer game. It totally ruined my perception of money.
I was so accustomed to that. Again, I went from betting like $5 to the point where I'm now watching a game and I have over $300,000 on the line or of losses of that specific game. And so how did I get to that point? That's the 10 to 15-year journey of gambling that you will get to that point eventually. I started as a 15-year-old kid where I didn't even have a job yet legally to where now I have equity in a company and I'm risking that on a game. So you will get to that point later in your life because as your life evolves, you make more money in your career. Opportunities present themselves to where you become flush with cash, whether you sell a home or sell assets or whatever it is. There will come a point in time where you have a significant amount of cash available. And that will be the deciding moment on truly if you have a problem gambling or not. I've relapsed multiple times in those 3 years. And I think that's very important and transparent to say because gambling is so easily accessible now. It wasn't until last year when I started to self-exclude myself from the apps and everywhere else, right? So you have the ability to go back into it very easily if you don't take those proper steps. And so the self-exclusion thing has helped, but that was 2 years after I decided to get help, right? So there's been multiple relapses in that time, but every single time that I've relapsed, I've taken the emotions that I've learned from therapy and learned from my recovery journey as to what caused that, the trigger that caused that, what situation was I putting myself into at that time it forced me to go back and gamble. And I think that's important for anybody in recovery, whether it's drugs or alcohol or gambling. There's going to be something that triggers you back to where you want to go to where you were during that addiction.
Spiraled out of control, I would say, for like the last couple years. I had suffered a traumatic brain injury post neck surgery while being out on workman's compensation. I had foolishly purchased a pill when I had ran out of my meds and couldn't get a hold of my surgeon, and I had overdosed, nearly died on my front porch. I was in a coma for 2 weeks and suffered a traumatic brain injury. Leading up to that, that's when my gambling had spiraled out of control, all online. I vividly remember waking up out of the coma and immediately going on the gambling apps. It spiraled out of control from there. I was up that money at that point. I was up 6 figures. That just got put into my bank account. And I gambled it all the way. At that point in time, I didn't even receive my 6-figure workman's comp settlement yet either. And that opened the floodgates even more for me. I had money at my disposal plus the winnings. Like at that point in time, I was still able to stay off the apps for a few days to a week. It wasn't as impulsive as it has been, I'd say, within the last year is when it really spiraled out of control for me. If I came across significant money, all the apps would have to be deleted. I'd have to self-exclude myself from everything. Otherwise, it's all going to be gone. Like, I've already considered selling my car to then just go and gamble and try and, win some money. But in doing so, I know what's going to happen. So like, at least I've kind of drawn the line at that point, but I'm just down so much. It's just like, well, car, no car, whatever, like that's kind of my mentality, but I haven't gotten to that point yet. And I'm trying not to.
A dream that we can only think about experiencing. We've done it. I mean, I've won thousands of dollars, and my brain then tells me I should be able to win more and more. And especially when I was at a point where the debt was just so much, I knew that one or two wins, which, in and of itself were significant. Looking at the big picture, it really didn't have a significant impact on my financial situation. So I wanted to continue. One of the interesting memories that I have was I was behind in my mortgage, probably a couple of months behind. And I was sitting in a slot machine saying, I need to have this because I was very much afraid of my wife finding out and, losing a house, or at least getting those, threatening letters, collection attempts. And I'm sitting in a slot machine and I'm praying that I just win, and I won. And I got a jackpot that was more than enough to cover that, a mortgage payment that was due. But I continued to play. Makes no sense, no logic to it. It's, absolutely insane, but that's what this addiction does, because then I just wanted to win more. And the win only reinforced my thought that I should be able to do it again and again and again.
The night I made my first bet, I was feeling quite calm. I was feeling quite happy, content. I had a lot going on. I had a perception of the world that was very positive. It took me a long time to get back to that, to feeling like that, feeling calm and content. And then the last bit, I was anxious. I was feeling helpless, a loss of agency, loss of control, not being in control of myself.
And what changed that? How did you get from that calmness to the exact opposite, being that anxiety?
Feeling like I wasn't in control of my life. Feeling like I had been taken away from the path I was on, distracted, and my sense of priorities had completely shifted as a result of it. And I was completely consumed by the need to gamble. And as I always say to people, like, when you've got rates of harm associated with a product as high as 50%, then that is by design. That is by design, addiction by design. But when you had the rapid event frequency of fixed odds betting terminals combined with the addictive roulette content, the accessibility, the ability to stake up to £100 a spin, all of those factors, the structural characteristics of that product meant that my gambling style was altered. If you want people to gamble responsibly, you would restrict the amount of bets they can place, or you would put stake limits on products, or you would offer gambling that's available in ambient environments that's safe and not too associated with addiction. And they don't do that. Their entire business model, their commercial model, is optimized for engagement, to get people to engage more than they otherwise would. And those that are engaging more than the average is to extract as much as they can from them. The sad reality is that people who get addicted to gambling are driving the vast majority of profits in the gambling industry. That's an inconvenient truth for the industry, is to come to terms with the fact that so much of their revenue is from people who are addicted to gambling. And if that wasn't to be true, they would have to completely shift their commercial model.
We as a family knew that Bobby was gambling, and he shared very little with us about the extent of his gambling. But we did know that he was coming to us to borrow money, of course, lying to us and telling us it was for gas or food or whatever. But when we caught on that each of us were being asked for $20, we kind of realized what was going on. We questioned him about it. He talked to me about it. And he said, it's not, I just go just to go. It's not really fun. It's not something I enjoy. It's just something I do. So yes, we did know that he was gambling. We did not know at that time that it was considered an addiction. We just thought he had a lack of impulse control. And just seeing them in the driveway, something I'll never forget, the look on their faces. My dad actually found Bobby with my two nephews. They were teenagers and they were spending a couple weeks in Portland, and they rode their bikes to his house because he hadn't answered his phone. That's how he was found. And so just having all of them there waiting for us. My mom was strong from the beginning. She said, I just needed to know that you guys were okay. They were just heart-wrenched at us driving with the information that we had. I just needed to hug them. So the next few days are just a big blur of stuff happening. Lots of different things going on. Like I said, my sister's two oldest boys were with my parents. So my sister's attention had to go to them. My brother who lived there, his kids were in New York with their mom. And so he was struggling on that as well. And then having an 18-month-old, like I had to be responsible for my kids in a time when I didn't know what to do.
Supposed to be at a meeting at 1. I missed that meeting. I was stuck at the casino. I had this urge that I could not stop. I was so far into debt and just nickel and diming everything that we had. And I had this urge, of course, to say, I'm going to go to the casino and I'm going to get out of this. And that definitely wasn't the case. I went to the casino probably for about 3 hours, self-sabotaged until I couldn't sabotage anymore. I remember being on the casino floor. My heart was racing. I was sweating. I was there to solve a problem. I wasn't there to have fun. As we know, when we gamble, the big lights, the fun games, they don't allow you to think consciously. They don't allow you to think strategically about anything but what the next bet's going to look like. So I remember just going crazy at the casino, lost everything, had no way out. I remember walking off the casino floor out into the parking lot. And as it usually did, that's when it hit me. My stomach sank in. I felt sick. I felt nauseous. I felt angry. I remember getting in my truck and just sitting in silence. I started to head home. And I call it the quietest, loud ride home because the radio was off. I was screaming at myself in the truck, the negative self-talk. You're such a loser. How could you do this? You're a failure. Just the worst things you could speak to yourself. This is kind of a powerful statement, but I remember just not wanting to live anymore. I was crying. I was at rock bottom. I didn't know what to do anymore. And ultimately, that's kind of the big turning point in my gambling addiction. And that was rock bottom.
Loans there, loans in the car, loans with the loan sharks and the bookies. I couldn't pick up the telephone and answer it. I was running scared. It was bad. I gambled my way to jail cells, right? I'm a 12-time convicted felon, right? And recovery has turned all that around and restored everything, not once, but twice. I gambled my way to psychiatric wards. I gambled my way to many suicide attempts. I gambled my way to substance use disorders with chemicals, right? You wreck your finances, you got to pour something on top of it. That was me. I gambled my way to complete homelessness, living as a fugitive in a tent in the woods, right across from Rosie's, panhandling, holding a sign to get money to run back and forth to Rosie's so I could get money to eat, money for cigarettes, money so I could maybe, if I hit, right? When I had one of those days where I hit decent, I could get a hotel room, take a shower, those things. Wow. That's how bad it got over the years, right? And even when I went to jail, Rob, I gambled my way to isolation cells, right? I get into jail and, that's the thing going on. The canteen is the currency in jail. Right. I got a big box of canteen. I hit the poker table, right? The card table. And now next thing I know, I burn up all my canteen. I'm in debt. And now I'm in trouble, right? And my rear end's on fire and I can't pay it back. Right. And so now I'm like, hey, I got to leave. People are after me on this pod. You got to get me out of here. And so now I'm in an isolation cell. And so it got really bad.
These brave people shared their stories of addiction in an effort to help you avoid going down the same path. Check the description of this video for links to their full interviews, and let's keep getting better together, one day at a time.